Ireland or Mukto in the Grand Lake region, we're proud to welcome home troops serving in Operation Provision. On January 12th, in the wee hours of the morning, 58 soldiers arrived at 5th Canadian Division Support Base Gagetown after working in Beirut and Amman to process Syrian refugees destined for Canada. Military personnel spent months supporting staff from the Department of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, aiding the security personnel with data entry and with medical screenings.
We were proud to see our soldiers contribute to this operation and proud to see them reunite with family and colleagues. I would like to personally thank these women and men for their service, and I salute their good work. Thank you.
An honourable member for North Okanagan-Shuswap.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians from across this nation continue to step up to assist refugees arriving here from Syria. I hope all members in this House share my appreciation for the many welcoming organizations that have sprung up across Canada to undertake this extraordinary task. This is true in my riding of Okanagan-Shuswap, where multiple organizations have been planning and fundraising since October to pull together the necessary support systems to welcome these families. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, welcoming committees in my riding, such as Trinity United Church in Vernon and St. Andrew's Church in Enderby, find themselves waiting for refugees' families who are also forced to wait in limbo due to this government's processes and policies. It's time for this government to get serious about moving forward with these refugee families in limbo, connect them with the organizations awaiting to welcome them into their communities and support them in their transition ahead. Thank you.
The honourable member for Winnipeg South.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize today in this House the passing of Floyd Trevor Wiebe in late 2015. Mr. Wiebe grew up in the Winnipeg South community of St. Vital. He was a successful entrepreneur and businessman, but will be best remembered for his work helping and protecting young people. Floyd's son, TJ, was tragically murdered in 2003. Instead of withdrawing into bitterness and despair over the loss of his child, Floyd instead chose to focus his considerable energies and charisma in supporting victims of violence, including becoming involved with the Manitoba Organization for Victim Assistance. Floyd eventually founded the TJ's Gift Foundation, an organization dedicated to support young Manitobans and steer them away from drugs. He became a passionate advocate for youth and commanded the attention of all who heard him speak powerfully against the perils of drugs and violence. Mr. Speaker, it is right that this House recognize the contributions of citizens who, through their dedication and effort to their communities, make Canada a better place for all. It is in this spirit of recognition that I ask
The honourable member. The honourable member for Churchill-Huat-Nookasky.
Mr. Speaker, today we join the Métis Nation, Manitobans and Canadians across the country in commemorating Louis Riel, a courageous national leader and an advocate for justice for the Métis people. Riel is also regarded as the founder of the province of Manitoba, and he was executed unjustly for defending the rights of his people. Today, we recommit to working with the Métis people in the pursuit of justice. This includes immediately establishing a negotiation process between Canada and the Manitoba Métis Federation to settle the outstanding land claim.
We support the federal process dealing with Métis claims, stable funding for basic activities, and launching important investment in education and training.
True reconciliation, we must establish a nation-to-nation relationship with the Métis Nation. The NDP remains committed to establishing that nation-to-nation relationship. We will continue to work with the Métis Nation to achieve Louis Riel's vision of a fair and inclusive country for all. Miigwech.
Here, here. The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to the iconic Italian-Canadian journalist Sergio Tagliavini-Jelinek, who passed away on the 25th of January. Sergio was passionate about his profession, which spanned over 4 decades in serving the community. His contributions were many and lasting, including managing editor at the Corriere Canadese, the founding of Lo Specchio, and recently the establishment of the Monument to Italian-Canadian Workers Killed on the Job. Sergio was awarded one of Italy's highest honors, the Cavaliere della Repubblica Italiana, as well as Journalism Merit and Special Achievement Medals from Canada, Ontario, and the City of Vaughan. I was lucky to meet and know Sergio. He had a deep understanding of current affairs and his community and was a warm and thoughtful individual. On behalf of the constituents of Vaughan Woodbridge, I want to extend my condolences to his family. He was a remarkable person who will be greatly missed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On February 16, 2016, Barrie resident Nicole Marchand passed away after a long battle with cancer at the young age of 30. She was born the same year as I was and was a fellow student at Innisdale Secondary School. Nicole has been recognized as a hero for her positive attitude, her constant fervor to give others hope, and the amount of lives she's changed through the courage shown and displayed in such a public fight in Barrie. I do not believe it is quite fitting just to say that her memories will live on, for it's a legacy Nicole's left of courage in the face of fear, strength to give even more when so much is being taken, and positivity in times that have been cut far too short that will live on in the lives of those whom she has touched. Thank you to Nicole and your incredible family.
The honourable member for Glengarry, Prescott, Russell.
Mr. Speaker, last Friday a great leader from my riding received this country's highest civilian distinction, the Order of Canada. Jean-Marc Lalonde is a prominent leader of the Franco-Ontarian community. He has 40 years of municipal and provincial political experience, including 15 years as mayor of Rockland. He has worked tirelessly to promote and preserve the vitality of the French language. And he continues to serve as a municipal councillor. His many successes and accomplishments include co-founding the Association Française des Municipalités de l'Ontario and founding the Parlement Jeunesse Francophone de l'Ontario. He also contributed to the pride of Franco-Ontarians by having the Franco-Ontarian flag recognized as the official symbol of the community in Queen's Park. Mr. Lalonde is an exemplary leader and a source of inspiration for all in our community. Mr. Speaker, if I am able to accomplish just half of what Jean-Marc has accomplished in his political career, I will consider that to be a success. Once again, congratulations.
The honourable member for Eglinton Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to rise today to acknowledge the ongoing efforts of the good people in my riding of Eglinton Lawrence to provide meaningful support to the Syrian refugees, many of whom are arriving with nothing more than the clothes on their backs and the hope for a better life.
One of these good people is Grace Bazar. Grace is a 13-year-old student of St. Cosmas and Damien School who is part of the Girl Guides of Canada's Pathfinders program.
Leadership means many positive things, including lending a hand in Canada's response to the Syrian refugee crisis. Knowing that our winters would be difficult for the refugees, Grace focused her efforts on collecting winter coats, hats, scarves, mittens, and other accessories which would help keep them warm as they acclimated to their new home.
Grace has seen incredible support for her clothes drive. She has collected over 300 articles of clothing, which will be given to recently arrived refugees.
I am so proud of Grace. She reminds each and every one of us that making a difference is as much about the leadership shown by individual volunteers in their communities as the important decisions we take in this House.
The honourable member for Brandon Souris.
Mr. Speaker, it's with great pleasure that I congratulate the volunteers and organizers of the 13th Annual Brandon Winter Festival. I'm proud of how our Winter Festival has grown and thrived over the years. None of it would be possible without the volunteers and countless residents who participated and attended this end of January ritual in Brandon. It was a beautiful weekend as thousands of Westman residents lined up at the 8 pavilions to enjoy a snapshot of music, art, dance, and fine cuisine of each culture. Our Winter Festival brings the entire community together to celebrate in Canada's rich and diverse cultural heritage. I am especially pleased to see how Westman embraces our diversity and to see neighbours and friends come together to showcase our cultural mosaic that makes us distinctively Canadian. And as we continue to work here in the People's Commons, Let us renew our enthusiasm and strive to make Canada the most inclusive and welcoming country in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, I am proud to rise in the House today to share my congratulations to the Canadian sledge hockey team for their silver medal win at the World Sledge Hockey Challenge that took place last month in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. Sledge hockey is the Paralympic version of ice hockey, and the first World Cup was held 25 years ago in Norway. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank Events Lunenburg County, businesses, municipal, provincial, and federal funding partners, and the 112 volunteers who put in hours and hours of work to make these world-class athletes feel at home on the South Shore of Nova Scotia. The impact of this event will live with workshops on increasing awareness about disabilities. Many schools and young students also learned about building active and supportive communities. Mr. Speaker, the sold-out gold medal match was a nail-biter, and Canada narrowly lost in overtime to the United States. Congratulations once again to all the players, organizers, and volunteers for a fun and exciting tournament.
The honourable member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, today I'm honoured to stand in the House of Commons to wish the organizers, volunteers, and participants in the Special Olympics Northeast Winter Games all the best as they begin competition in Sault Ste. Marie on February 20th. Over the past 40 years, Special Olympics have provided people with intellectual disabilities the opportunity to develop physical fitness, demonstrate courage, experience joy, and develop their relationships with friends, family, and community through sports. They have been dedicated to promoting values such as respect, acceptance, inclusion, and human dignity. As the Member of Parliament for Sault Ste. Marie, I am delighted to have this opportunity to congratulate my community on the opening of the Northeast Winter Games. Special Olympics Ontario does important work, and I encourage them to continue that work for years to come. Thank you for all you bring to our communities, and good luck to this year's participants. Let the Games begin.
The honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, a week ago today in the beautiful and peaceful town of Almonte, Bernard Cameron was shot and killed in his own home while defending his family. The details of his death are well known, and all that needs to be repeated here is that he died a hero, protecting the lives and safety of those he loved. It's tempting when one learns of this kind of extraordinary courage to dwell upon that final moment rather than on the life that preceded it, and this would be a shame, for Bernard Cameron's life was characterized by the same strength, love, and resolution which he showed in his final act. He was a much-loved high school teacher, a deeply committed member of the Almonte community, including service as a scoutmaster, serving 2 terms as a municipal councillor, and he spent nearly 2 decades on the board of the local museum. The Camerons were also adopted parents, and they were loving grandparents as well. It was in defending his grandchildren as well as his daughter that he was killed. A week later, Almonte is still in shock. Let us join with the community in praying for the well-being of the entire Cameron family at this most difficult time.
The honourable member for Pierrefonds-Delard.
Mr. Speaker, last week was Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week. Pediatric congenital cardiologists were the first to perform open heart surgery in 1944, thereby starting the modern era of cardiac surgery. We Canadians should be particularly proud to know that we have world leaders in this field, including Toronto Sick Children's Hospital, with renowned physicians such as Dr. Lee Benson and Dr. Gil Gross. Au Quebec,
in Quebec, St. Justine Hospital leads humanitarian missions every year under the leadership of Doctors Joachim Miro and Nancy Poirier. Their medical teams have been to Morocco, Egypt, and Ethiopia to perform cardiac surgery and transfer their skills to local doctors.
Summary. Anyone who has been touched by heart disease should know we owe an enormous debt of gratitude to the wonderful men and women who work in the field of congenital heart disease.
The honourable member for Esquimalt, Saanich-Sooke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In November, when the government announced it would recognize LGBT refugees as among the highest risk Syrian refugees, I was among the first to praise the government for changing Canada's policy to recognize the fact that LGBT refugees are subject to extra risk simply because of who they are. When it quickly became clear that LGBT refugees weren't actually getting through the system, I approached the Minister of Immigration and he asked me to work with the government to find a solution. 3 obstacles still remain: getting access to the Canadian system from the region, meeting the unique settlement needs of LGBT refugees, and making links with the local LGBT groups in Canada waiting to sponsor them. In December, I presented the government with a plan to work with Egal Canada and private sponsorship groups from across the country to get those at risk here as quickly as possible. Now, nearly 3 months have passed. The government continues to express its good intentions while the lives of LGBT Syrians remain at serious risk. I call on the government to act to create a path which will allow LGBT Syrian refugees to find the safety and support they need here in Canada, and to do so now.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, was created in 1949 to support Palestinian refugees, but UNRWA has been politicized by the corrupt Hamas government in Gaza in flagrant violation of the UN policy of neutrality. Human rights organizations in Canada and abroad cite redirection of AIDS funds and material, storage of weapons, and incitement to violence against Israel in UNRWA-operated schools. B'nai B'rith Canada says Canadian aid for Arab-Palestinian welfare should go only to specific humanitarian programs and peaceful infrastructure projects. UN Watch has accused dozens of UNRWA staffers of using their official positions to incite Palestinian stabbing and shooting attacks against Israeli Jews. Mr. Speaker, my Thornhill constituents ask, why can't the Liberals find more appropriate ways of delivering humanitarian aid rather than simply handing it to terrorist sympathizers?
The honourable member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise in the House not only as a Member of Parliament, but also as a woman who has worked hard to champion the cause of gender equality, particularly in science, engineering, technology, and mathematics. I've worked in a traditionally male-dominated industry my whole life, and I've seen gender inequality in many forms. Today, only 18% of female students versus 37% of male are likely to graduate with a bachelor's degree in a science-related field. This statistic is simply unacceptable. That's why I'm applauding the United Nations for marking February 11th as International Day of Women and Girls in Science. This is a significant step because it helps women, including women like Victoria Caspi, who just won the Hertzberg Medal, to harness their greatest potential and contribute to society in the field of their choosing. I invite all Canadians, women and men alike, to join me in celebrating this important achievement. Thank you.
Oral questions, questions orales. Honorable leader de l'opposition.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, mistakenly, Canadians actually believed that the Prime Minister wanted to do things differently. But last night, on the first night of our debate on pulling out the CF-18s, we find out that the fighter jets had already actually flown their last mission. He didn't even wait for the debate or wait for Parliament to vote. So my question is simple. How could the Prime Minister show so much disrespect for parliamentarians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I am pleased to have participated in this debate that is ongoing in our continuing engagement in the fight against ISIL and our strong role as part of the coalition. As you know, Canadians got an opportunity to weigh in the last election on what they wanted for Canada to engage in ISIL, and they rejected the Conservatives' military emphasis. They rejected the NDP's stepping back. They accepted that we have the best plan for a whole-of-government approach that steps up our involvement in ways that Canada can best help.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday Bombardier announced 7,000 jobs being done away with that affects families. The same kinds of cutbacks have affected tens of thousands of Canadians in the energy sector. But the Liberals haven't done what they could to help them. The Prime Minister refuses to support Energy East, for example. Now, why this double standard? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we find the job loss deplorable, and we stand with the families that are experiencing difficult times. And that is why, indeed, we have a different approach from the former government. We truly want to export our resources in a sustainable way, and we know that this has to be done working with the environment and in respect of communities and not against them and against environmental concerns, because that gave no results for 10 years. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Statistics Canada shows that the number of people on EI in Saskatchewan is up nearly 40%. These are people that depend on the resource sector, and they don't want a bailout, and they don't even ask for a handout. All they want is an opportunity to get back to work. Right. But what they're getting instead, Mr. Speaker, are roadblocks to pipelines, new carbon taxes, or they're being told to just hang in there. Does the Prime Minister understand that what he's doing is actually more harm to the economy than good?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's actually quite interesting to me to hear the member opposite talk about the need to strengthen EI, because it was this party that campaigned on a platform to do exactly that, and her party stood against the kinds of strengthening to EI that we know is going to make a difference in the lives of people facing economic downturns and job losses right across the country. We are working very, very hard to improve the EI system that they have neglected for so many years, and we look forward to having good news across the country in the coming weeks.
Excellent.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, we saw in this House that the government has completely lost control of public spending, and today we understand that the Prime Minister has no plan to help Canadians who are losing their jobs apart from sympathy. The latest case is Bombardier. 2,400 breadwinners of Quebec families will lose their jobs. What does the Prime Minister intend to do to help the families in question so that Bombardier can sell its planes around the world? The Prime Minister, it's been 10 years that we've had a government in this country that did nothing for the manufacturing sector, that did not take care of people in need, and who concentrated entirely on the oil industry and did not get ready for bad times that were on the horizon. So after 10 years of negligence on the part of this government, the former government, we are happy to work productively with the provinces, with the various sectors, to ensure that we are building a strong economy for everyone. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. 2,400 breadwinners are losing their jobs, and they think that the Prime Minister isn't thinking of them. They didn't say a word about Bombardier. Whether he allows Bombardier and the city, the Willie Bishop Airport, to have these planes to land there, I want to know if the Prime Minister will allow the Minister of Transport to permit these planes to land at Billy Bishop Airport. That will create jobs. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Once again, we can see that the Conservative Party is playing games of division, pitting one part of the country against another. We can see the kinds of lack of responsibility that brought them to the opposition benches. The truth is that we are working with Bombardier to ensure that we will have good news with Air Canada, as we saw yesterday, and that we are helping families in difficulty. And we'll keep the kind of responsible investments that will work well for taxpayers and for the economy. That's what we intend to do.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, today officials confirmed to the Trade Committee that they haven't completed a study of the TPP's impact on Canadians. Experts are saying this deal would put thousands of jobs on the line, give foreign companies the power to challenge our environmental laws, and make medicine more expensive. How can the government expect Canadians to believe that they are being consulted in a truly meaningful way when Liberals haven't even studied the impact of this deal on Canadian families?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, our International Trade Minister has been engaged in consultations right across the country, and indeed we have committed to bring forward the TPP to a debate and discussion here in the House so we can hear the different sectors that will have advantages and from the sectors that have concerns. The fact is we have committed to open consultations. We made that promise during the election campaign, and we are going to be keeping that promise.
Now the member for London Fanshawe.
Well, tell that to the trade officials. Liberals think that you can consult Canadians without even letting them know what the TPP would do. Mr. Speaker, it gets worse. Liberals say they will review the temporary foreign worker program, but fail to mention that the TPP creates new loopholes to make it easier for companies to bring in foreign workers. How do they expect to fix the broken temporary foreign worker program while they ram through a trade deal that creates new loopholes?
You're here. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we have committed to openly consulting and engaging with Canadians and indeed parliamentarians. And the NDP will have an opportunity to make its anti-trade positions heard loud and clearly in this Parliament. The fact of the matter is we are going to engage responsibly around files that matter to the Canadians to make sure that they actually have the opportunity to make decisions about what's in our best interests as an economy.
Almost got it. Almost got it. Okay.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, yesterday we learned that 7,000 workers, including 2,400 Quebecers, were losing their jobs, but doesn't seem to have excited or worried the Prime Minister, but he didn't have much to say to them except for the usual banalities. These families are worried. The government's silence concerning help for Bombardier has lasted long enough. When will they understand that these are thousands of good jobs at risk? When will they work for families and their workers and their families? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Quebecers and all Canadians expect that this government will be responsible in its investments with partners. We've been working with Bombardier for a long time now to ensure that the investments we will make will be in the interests of both the workers and Canadians. Of course, we find these job losses most unfortunate. That's why we have focused on job creation and investments in the economy. That's what we were elected to do, and that's what we will do. The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. 2,400 families in Quebec are affected, and the only thing we have are crocodile tears from the Prime Minister. We'd already lost enough jobs, and now we've had more bad news. Maybe the government has the intention of amending the Air Canada Public Participation Act. There are already 2,600 jobs that have been lost, but for Air Canada, that is confirmed by 2 court decisions. Has the government really prepared to relieve Air Canada of its obligations? And a minister and the Prime Minister telling these 2,600 people that they can kiss their jobs goodbye? The Honourable Prime Minister. What we clearly know is that this inflamed rhetoric of the NDP will not help to create any solutions or jobs. We're working responsibly on this side of the House in order to ensure that we will be building a strong economy and a strong future for Quebecers and for Canadians, for those who are worried about job losses and for those who want a better future for their children. That's why we were elected, and that is what we will deliver in the budget in a few weeks' time.
Honourable Member for Milton.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a minister's fundamental job is to fulfill her mandate letter. And the Minister of Finance's letter tells him that he has to implement campaign promises. And what do we have so far? So far, we've discovered that their tax scheme will cost Canadian taxpayers $1 billion. Wow. We know that they've blown through their deficit cap of $10 billion. We also know now that they have no plan to return to a balanced budget, ever. So, 3 broken campaign promises. And, Mr. Speaker, he's not fulfilling his mandate letter. So my question is simple. Is he just making this up as he goes along, or is he actually going to execute on the letter from the Prime Minister?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I want to remind the Honourable Member that we were elected on October 19th by Canadians who elected us on a plan to grow the economy. We made it very clear what we were going to do. We said that we were going to reduce taxes for the middle-class Canadians who need a tax reduction. We've already moved forward on that. we said that we are going to move forward with a Canada Child Benefit that's going to help 9 out of 10 families and hundreds of thousands of children. Then we're going to move forward on infrastructure investments that are going to help us grow this economy, all the while by being very prudent with our expenses along the way.
Hear, hear, hear. The honourable member for Milton.
Selective reading of his campaign promises, but nonetheless, his mandate letter goes on to say the following as well. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that we fulfill our promises while living within our fiscal plan. So, Mr. Speaker, my question again to the Minister of Finance, is a $30 billion deficit living within his fiscal plan?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we have put forward a plan for Canadians. It's a plan that will be laid out in more detail during the course of our upcoming budget. What we have told Canadians, especially those middle-class Canadians who want to do better, is that we have a plan that will make a real difference in growth. We will do it by being fiscally prudent along the way. We will do it by making sure that our level of debt to GDP over time reduces. And yes, we aim to get to a balanced budget over time, recognizing that our economy makes that more challenging. That remains a very important goal for this government.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 3,000 jobs were lost in Quebec in January after 6 months of stability under the Conservative government. And now, the effect of this government on the economy is beginning to be felt. We're losing jobs, Bombardier, Rio Tinto, and the forestry sector. What is the minister responsible for economic development doing? He's putting a questionnaire online. Question number 1, what are the main assets or economic strengths of your region? I hope that the minister already knows the answer. Is he just discovering Quebec's regions and the know-how of its workers?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for his question. And as the member knows, this government is very committed to growing the economy across the country from coast to coast to coast, Mr. Speaker, particularly in Quebec. We have a very strong regional development agency there, Mr. Speaker, that's making sound investments in different parts of the Quebec economy, Mr. Speaker. I was there most recently making investments to the Canadian Space Agency as well, Quartier l'Innovation in Montreal, Mr. Speaker. We're going to continue to diversify the economy, create jobs, Mr. Speaker, particularly in Quebec and across the country.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. The minister's silence is not reassuring. I repeat, 3,000 jobs lost in January. Is there a pilot on board the plane? The government has no plan to help Quebec's regions. I ask the minister to make his intentions clear as far as CED Quebec is concerned. Is he aware of the positive impact of this region on all regions of the province, which benefits many businesses and thousands of workers? How, through concrete steps, can the government show that they are taking the economic development of all Quebec's regions seriously? The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
We articulated that plan during the campaign, Mr. Speaker. We're making historic investments to create jobs, Mr. Speaker. Let me remind the member opposite that we're making investments in shipbuilding, and through making sure that not only through shipbuilding but through jets, Mr. Speaker, we're making investments across the country, particularly in Quebec, Mr. Speaker. And we're going to make sure that these investments create good long-term jobs, good high-quality jobs, Mr. Speaker, and we're going to work with the Regional Development Agency to diversify the economy.
The Honourable Member for Brantford-Brant.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal platform promised Canadians a balanced budget in 2019. But even before their first budget, the Liberals are throwing their entire fiscal plan out the window. The economies are often unpredictable, but serious governments keep their promises and their fiscal targets. So why are the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister betraying the promise of balancing the budget?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect us to actually take actions to make their lives better. We recognize that middle-class Canadians have not had a fair increase in income for many years. The most vulnerable really need to be helped in our society. We have put forward ideas that we know we can put into our budget in 2016 that will make a real difference for Canadians. We know that we can deal with an economy that's more challenging than we expected, and that is what governing is all about.
Honourable Member for Brantford-Brant.
Mr. Speaker, it wasn't just the Liberal platform that promised a balanced budget. I'll remind the Finance Minister that the Prime Minister explicitly directed him to balance the budget in his term. The very first point in the mandate letter from the Prime Minister was to meet, quote, the fiscal anchor of balancing the budget in 2019. That's right. Will the Finance Minister confirm that he will do as the Prime Minister has directed him and balance the budget in this term? And if not, what was the point of the mandate letter?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians elected us on October 19th because they had confidence that we were ready and willing to put forward ideas that can make a real difference in their lives. We are facing past 10 years where we've had low growth. We now realize that the economy is more challenging even than we expected when we were elected. We are moving forward with a plan that will be prudent, that will remain focused on reducing our net debt to GDP over time, and that will aim to get us to a balanced budget over the term, recognizing how challenging that will be in our economic environment.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, the economy is stalled and job losses are multiplying. Just yesterday, Bombardier announced the loss of 7,000 jobs, including 2,400 in Quebec, while thousands of families are living in anguish and wondering about if they can make ends meet. EI is less and less accessible for those who need it. The latest statistics say 36% have access to it. In their budget, the government finally help workers and create an eligibility threshold that's universal at 360 hours? The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Employment insurance has failed Canadians. The number that are available, that working Canadians that are eligible to receive employment insurance, has declined year after year under the previous government. It's important for us, and we have committed to do so, to review the whole program, make it accessible for Canadians. So that's exactly what we intend to do.
The Honourable Member for Churchill-Kiwatanook-Askey.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians don't want a review. They want immediate action so that they can access employment insurance in their communities. Let's turn to what fishers in Norway House, Manitoba are facing, who are being treated like criminals for receiving EI. They're being interrogated, intimidated, and even being told to hand over the records of people that have died. People are being cut off from their benefits without even having the chance to plead their case. Mr. Speaker, we are talking about some of the poorest people in Canada. So will this government work with Norway House fishers to resolve this situation immediately?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, this is a very sensitive case. Individuals are going through an investigation. It's ongoing, and I cannot comment.
The Honourable Member for Old Lake, Port McMurray.
Mr. Speaker, in late December, the Minister of Finance announced that the territorial governments would be facing major federal funding cuts due to the rejigging of the territorial funding formula. Now, under mounting pressure, the Minister is saying he will restore the funding, but only partially. Mr. Speaker, the territorial governments are still facing millions of dollars in cuts. When will the government fully restore the funding and stop leaving Northerners out in the cold?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to answer this question. We found that Statistics Canada made a change in the way they calculated the territorial financing formula, a change that impacted the Northern Territories. We worked collaboratively with the Northern Territories. I'd like to thank the members on this side of the House who helped me as well. And we came up with a solution that gives them stable and predictable funding over time. It brought them back very close to where they were before, and we dealt with it appropriately.
The Honourable Member for Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, in northern communities, the cost of shipping goods drives up the cost tremendously. the territorial governments are also facing high costs when delivering services such as health care to remote communities. With the governments already shunning natural resources, the biggest industry in the north, how do they expect territorial governments to budget and deliver key services after cutting vital funding?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, again, I'd like to say that we will continue to work collaboratively with the territories in the north. We recognize that provinces and territories across this country have challenges when we deal with difficult economic times, especially times where commodities and prices change. We believe that in the instance of the territorial financing formula, we came up with a solution that helped those territories to understand their future situation, and we will continue to work together dealing with the challenges that people across this country face.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Finance Minister dismissed the concerns of Saskatchewan and Alberta. Despite the calls by Premier Wall to address the problems in the equalization formula, the Liberals are doing nothing. Saskatchewan is being forced to pay into equalization as if oil was still at $100 a barrel, despite the fact that oil is clearly trading closer to $30. That is so obviously unfair. The Finance Minister agreed to make some changes to other calculations for Yukon, Nunavut, and the Northwest Territories. Will he provide the same fairness to Alberta and Saskatchewan?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start by confirming again that the territories in the north were dealing with a statistical change through Statistics Canada. We are talking about how we can help people that are facing real challenges across this country. Middle-class families across the country, people in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland and Labrador. And we're putting forth a program that will actually help them. Tax cuts for 9 million Canadians, the Canada Child Benefit for those most vulnerable, and we're going to make investments in infrastructure that will help the middle class, that will help those most vulnerable, and improve our economy.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, leftover money for infrastructure does not make up for the unfairness that exists in the formula. Saskatchewan is paying millions of dollars to other provinces despite the crash in the price of oil. If this minister thinks that paving some roads is going to make up for the massive amounts of wealth being transferred, he obviously doesn't understand how equalization works. All we are asking is that he provide the same fairness to Western provinces. Based on his last answer, clearly he won't. So can he at least explain to the people of Alberta and Saskatchewan why they don't deserve equal treatment?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to again say that we are working hard to improve our economy for all Canadians. We're working hard to improve the economy for middle-class Canadians that are challenged, and we're working hard to work with especially those provinces that have been particularly hard hit through the change in commodity prices. That will be a continuing endeavour of this government. We will see initiatives in our budget that will make a real difference, and we will focus on making that difference in the weeks and months to come.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, in Quebec and in Canada, we must provide care based on needs, not on people's ability to pay. The NDP has twice written to the Minister of Health, and I have to once again rise in this House to ask her to take action in the area of user fees in Quebec. Regardless of our ridings, who has the means among our fellow citizens to pay $300 for drops or $500 for a colonoscopy? And yet the Canada Health Act is clear on this subject. The Minister has a duty to respect that act. What is the government waiting for to put an end to this two-tier system? Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I have been pleased over the time that our government has been in power to work with my colleagues in the provinces and territories to address modernising our Canada health care system. We know that it's a system that Canadians are proud about, but we know that it's a system that needs to be fundamentally modernised. I will be working with all of my colleagues, including my colleague, the Minister of Health in Quebec. I will continue my conversations with him and the other colleagues, and we will work together to reach new agreements as to what the healthcare system needs to meet the needs of Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
The Minister supports the Canada Health Act. She should enforce it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the tainted blood scandal of the 1980s affected 30,000 Canadians and infected them with HIV and hepatitis, cost billions in compensation, and the Creever inquiry found that for-profit paid blood collection puts the safety of Canadians at risk. Yet today, a private for-profit plasma clinic is opening in Saskatchewan, directly contrary to his findings. Will the minister stand up for safety in Canada's blood supply system and close this clinic, or does she disagree with Justice Creever?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I am proud to stand up in the name of safety for the blood supply system in Canada. It's recognized internationally as one of the safest systems in the world, and maintaining the safety of that system is an absolute priority of our government. We are committed to using evidence-based policy, and while this is a sensitive matter that my colleague has addressed, we have examined this in great detail and have confirmed that we are approaching this matter looking at the science and making sure that there are no compromises to the safety of the blood system.
The Honourable Member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, in recent years it has become more and more difficult for students to find summer work. Last summer alone, nearly 300,000 students could not find summer jobs. Mr. Speaker, this simply cannot continue. We need to invest in young Canadians together to help them build a stronger future and obtain the skills and experience they need to contribute to our collective economic growth. Will the Minister explain what the Government of Canada is doing to help Canadian youth find summer employment?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, help is finally on its way. We are proud to have doubled the funding and the positions for Canadian students this summer. Over 35,000 new jobs are going to be added, and those young people will have the experience they need to get into our workforce. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Portage-Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians want to be buying and using Canadian oil. That's because they support the over 450,000 jobs that the Canadian energy sector brings. Folks in New Brunswick and Quebec are offended that foreign oil is being given better treatment than Canadian oil. Mr. Speaker, Canadian oil is extracted responsibly, it's transported responsibly. When will this government start to support the Canadian energy sector and the jobs that it brings, rather than undermining it and creating roadblocks and giving foreign oil special treatment?
Now the Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister has said many times, it's a responsibility of the Government of Canada to move our natural resources to tidewater sustainably. This is an objective and a result that the former government could not achieve, not building 1 kilometre of pipeline to tidewater when they had a majority government from 2011 until Election Day. Rather than following a failed path, we're starting a new path, Mr. Speaker, that will end up in the credibility of a process that we're confident will be in the best interests of...
The Honourable Member for Portage-Lisgar.
This government has a very difficult time supporting Canadian oil and gas. It's like they almost believe that Canadian oil and gas is bad and the jobs connected with them are bad. Can this minister stand up today and agree with what millions of Canadians believe, and the evidence shows that Canadian oil is responsibly extracted and Canadian pipelines are the safest in the world?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I've had the pleasure of consulting with the energy sector in Calgary twice. And to understand that the oil sector in Canada is leading the world in responsible practices in the development of new technologies, it was innovation that led to the development of the oil industry in Alberta in the first place. And we will be working with those responsible entrepreneurs as we transition over time, Mr. Speaker, to an energy economy that is more dependent on renewables and on sustainable development.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, last week the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations stated at a press conference that pipelines will need an Indigenous license to proceed. So I would like to ask the Minister, does she agree with giving a veto over the development of Canada's natural resources?
The The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, over the last number of weeks, I've had the pleasure of having meaningful conversations with Indigenous leaders in Halifax, in Winnipeg, and only last week in Vancouver, meeting with Indigenous leaders from the North Coast, from the Okanagan, and from the Vancouver area itself. And what they have been telling me time and time again, Mr. Speaker, is how refreshing it is for them to actually have a conversation with the Government of Canada that they haven't had in 10 years.
Member for Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has confused this issue for both industry and for First Nations. During the election campaign, he says no means no. More recently, he's backtracking from that commitment. Uncertainty hurts both prospective development and Indigenous communities. Can the Minister stand in this House and provide clarity? Does no mean no, yes, or maybe?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the message that we received from Indigenous leaders from virtually every region of the country is that they want to be involved in responsible and meaningful ways as we develop the natural resource sector in Canada. That hasn't happened, and these projects will not be built unless it does, and that's why a leading principle in the new way of doing things is to have conversations in a meaningful way with Indigenous communities from coast to coast, something this government failed to do.
The honourable member for South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, the softwood lumber agreement expired last year, but the government has shown no signs of working to get a new deal. There are thousands of jobs on the line in forestry communities throughout British Columbia and across this country, and the clock is ticking on these good family-supporting jobs. And communities are looking for action. So when does the government expect to have a new agreement in place to protect Canadian forestry jobs?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Thank you for that question. The forestry industry is incredibly important across this country, and we are very aware of the significance of the softwood lumber agreement, and we are working very hard on it. I'm proud to inform you that actually at our very first bilateral meeting with President Obama, I was fortunate to be there, and our Prime Minister proactively raised this agreement. My officials and I personally are negotiating very actively. My officials were in Washington last week. We're working very hard on this deal. It's essential for Canadians.
The honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government promised change, but it doesn't seem to understand what the word means. Instead, they are adopting parts of the Conservative agenda. It seems that they're about to carry out the Conservatives' ill-conceived plan to close the Marine Communication and Traffic Services Centre in Comox. Experts have warned us that this will put the safety of our coastal waters and the public at increased risk. Can the minister tell us exactly when the Liberal government plans to shut down the Comox MCTS?
Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Coast Guard, as I've mentioned before, has modernized its marine communications and traffic services centres with 21st century equipment. It's equipment that hasn't been replaced in almost over 30 years, and it's like moving from a dial phone to a smartphone. You know, this new technology is more reliable and is helping the Coast Guard officials deliver critical safety services more efficiently. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, the Defence Minister left the impression that the F-35 could be an option to replace our CF-18 fighter jets. Now, in the Liberal platform, it says, and I quote, "We will not buy the F-35 stealth fighter bomber." So I'll give the Minister a chance to explain himself here in the House. Will the F-35 be excluded from bidding in the process to replace our CF-18 fighter jets? Simple answer, yes or no. Great question.
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for the question. The constant discussion is about what they talk about is F-35. I'm committed to actually replacing the F-18 to making sure that we have the right capability for our Air Force that's going to be moving forward in the next 10 to 20 years that's going to meet the needs of Canada. Thank you.
Honourable member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government's plan to fight ISIL is simply standing on the sidelines. We're doing less, and that will be dangerous. They've already pulled our CF-18s, even while we're still debating their motion, and that puts our armed forces members in a vulnerable position. Will the Minister of Defence confirm that our Canadian soldiers are vulnerable on the ground? Yes or no?
Now the Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the safety of our personnel, our generals take this extremely seriously. When we deploy any type of personnel, the full rules of engagement and the appropriate defensive measures will always be there. So I can assure the member, our current members have the full array of all the support that the coalition has, and we have even added additional capability. But I also like to remind the member, to defeat ISIL will only happen on the ground, and that's the reason why we have tripled our training capacity.
Honourable Member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to represent the women and men of Garrison Petawawa,
Hear, hear.
home to the Canadian Special Operations Regiment. Yesterday, we learned that the Liberals have already withdrawn the CF-18 air cover for our troops on the ground. Now, the families of CSOR, those who provide the boots on the ground for this change in mission, want to know, is the minister prepared to take full responsibility for putting their loved ones at increased risk just to fulfill a campaign promise?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member also knows, I've served alongside members, and I know the families that have also been impacted of this. When it comes to the safety of our personnel, I take it very seriously. Having travelled into the region twice, I can also mention some of the capabilities that weren't brought in, and one was anti-armour capability. This is one of the reasons I've taken the meticulous effort to making sure we have the right capabilities for our deployed personnel, to making sure they have everything that they need and they have the full capability, and I can assure you they're well trained because I've been alongside them in the past. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Dartmouth, Cole Harbour.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It was my privilege to have the Minister of Innovation visit the Halifax area during Constituency Week. While at Volta Labs, the Minister announced over $2.7 million in funding from HoC to 7 companies and organizations representing the ICT, clean tech, and fisheries sectors in Nova Scotia. I'm proud to also mention, Mr. Speaker, that Pentel International, located in my riding of Dartmouth Cole Harbour, was one of the several companies to receive funding. Can the Minister kindly update the House on his recent HoC announcements?
Now the Minister of Innovation.
I'd like to thank the member for his question, Mr. Speaker. And you may be familiar with Atlantic Canada, where I saw firsthand the great work that HoC is doing to support the local economy. In Halifax, his government announced 7 projects, as the member mentioned, under HoC's business development program, which included, of course, investments in Volta Labs and ICT Hub, and investments in Pentel International, an innovative communications company in Dartmouth Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker. Advancing an innovation agenda that's going to create jobs is a priority for this government, and I was glad to be there and will continue to make those investments.
The Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday in this very place, the Minister of Foreign Affairs said, and I'd like to quote, the government has very stringent criteria for determining who will be provided humanitarian aid. We control every aspect from A to Z. This is in stark contrast to an interview given by the Minister of International Development last week, who acknowledged that aid could go to Islamic State fighters. Is the Minister of Foreign Affairs confused? Are Canadian tax dollars going to the terrorists?
The Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the only confusion that exists is in the Conservatives' minds. Obviously, Mr. Speaker, we are ensuring that the aid that Canadians pay for with their tax dollars is going to humanitarian causes and is not being used by terrorists. But at the same time, Médecins Sans Frontières, when they take care of people, they take care they don't check who they're fighting for first. They take care of people who are injured. That's their job. And just like people are not supposed to ask confusing questions. Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, our rural regions are having more and more trouble receiving services for their citizens, and yet they deserve equal treatment. Access to high-speed internet and quality cell phone coverage is vital for the safety and the development of our regions. The Conservatives never fix this problem because they don't understand the regions. Will the Minister of Innovation pledge to fix this problem once and for all with programs tailored to regional realities? Minister of Innovation.
The member opposite for the question. Of course, Mr. Speaker, internet touches every part of our lives, and connecting Canadians is a priority for this government, and that's why we're very confident in the program that we have, Connecting Canadians, from coast to coast to coast, which allows us to make investments in these remote and rural regions. It's really about promoting the digital economy, Mr. Speaker. It's about looking and addressing in a meaningful way the digital divide that currently exists, Mr. Speaker. This government is committed to this agenda, and I'll work with the member opposite to make sure that we continue to make these investments.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, Canada's dairy industry is second to none. The industry receives over $6 billion in farm gate sales, $15 billion in manufacturing sales, and supports over 100,000 jobs across the country. In addition, the industry is a leader with regard to environmental concerns. Can the Minister of Agriculture please inform us about the initiatives he is taking in order to invest in this important industry? Honourable Minister of Agriculture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank my honourable colleague from Shefford for his question. I recently announced $1.75 million in new funding for the Dairy Research Cluster. This will help boost milk yields, increase farm production, and improve knowledge around the health benefits of milk products. Our government will continue to invest in the dairy industry and agricultural science and research to ensure this great industry thrives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon University.
Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, the member for Cypress Hills Grasslands stood in this place and asked what the government is doing to secure the release of Kevin Garrett and his wife, Julia. They have been held now by Chinese security forces for over a year. What did the Minister of Foreign Affairs say in response? He said, "We have communicated how much we disagree with the situation." Mr. Speaker, I am not sure that the Minister's bureaucratic tone is grabbing the attention of the Chinese. When is the Minister of Foreign Affairs going to make the Garrett's release a priority?
Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Of course it's a priority, Mr. Speaker. The only goal I have in this is to free Mr. Garrett. It's something on which we work very hard. And I want to assure my colleague I'm ready to cooperate with him and with everyone to find a way to free Mr. Garrett. I'm not here to be the hero of the story and to pretend that I'm doing a lot of things that may be not helpful. The only goal is to free every Canadian in trouble around the world. That's right. And it's on which we will work.
The Honourable Member for Deville-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, last week, the government told us about its plan to fight ISIL. We commend the Prime Minister's intentions with regard to humanitarian aid, but his plan misses the mark. Why? It's simple, because without direct military aid, the humanitarian aid that we intend to provide might not get to the public because of the conflict. Is the government prepared to revisit its plan? Mr. Speaker, too many lives are at stake to make this into a partisan political issue. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Absolutely, it's not a political partisan issue, and that's why I would invite my colleague to look at the plan closely, because the plan reinforces Canada's plan to combat ISIL. It's tripling the training capacity. We're doubling the intelligence gathering capacity. We're reinforcing humanitarian aid. We're adding more aid to development. When we support Lebanon and Jordan, he should support this plan because it's an excellent one. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Mr. Speaker, the government's plan with regard to fighting ISIL completely reorients the military mission in Iraq and Syria. Yesterday, the Minister of Defense said that we would triple our ground troops in order to improve training and provide technical support to the Iraqi army and the Kurdish forces. And yet, the withdrawal of the CF-18s deprives our troops of important protection. The government says that it is going to put troops on the ground to protect our people in theater. Will the government commit to this?
Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the honourable member that when we work as part of a coalition, the coalition has all the full capabilities. The coalition will have airstrike capability. We are adding our own additional capability. We are actually adding exactly what the coalition needs because the defeat of ISIL can only happen on the ground, and that's why also the intelligence assets are needed. And Canadians have a tremendous amount of experience that has been gained, and this is exactly what we're going to be providing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Je crois que l'honorable député de...
I believe that the honourable member for Regina Capel would like to address the Thursday statement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Business will be for the rest of this week and the following week.
You're here.
Of the government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I know colleagues look forward to this every week. I'll be brief. This afternoon, Mr. Speaker, we'll continue with the debate on the Conservative opposition motion. Tomorrow, we'll resume debate on government business number 2, which was moved by the Prime Minister yesterday concerning Canada's fight against ISIL.
I am right now in negotiations with my counterparts from the other parties to reach an agreement about the length of the debate. We will debate the motion on Monday and Tuesday as well, and if we finish the debate on Tuesday evening, on Wednesday we will move to second reading of Bill C-2, amendments to the Income Tax Act.
Of next week will be an allotted day. Thanks very much.
Orders of the day.
Government orders, business of supply, resuming debate on the motion of Mr. Clement regarding Israel.